morning to you and welcome to the third and final day. And so far, by the end of today, we will have 93 presentations, one of the biggest vertical events that we've had in many a year. Our first session this morning is sponsored by CSA Global and Orlando Drilling. Dr. Peter Neumeyer is a highly motivated exploration geologist with experience ranging from the discovery of mineral deposits to the integration of geological, geochemical, and geophysical data sets. He's skilled in testing these exploration targets and improving the targeting-based strategy based on drill results, leading to discovery across Australia, Uganda, Rwanda, Canada, Austria, and Egypt. Please welcome the well-traveled Peter Neumeyer.
Thank you for the introduction. I'll be talking today about a integrated geological structural model for Higginsville. And before we start, I want to acknowledge my co-author, Dr. Steve Bowden, who is now General Manager Exploration Karora. And he did some of the work on this project as a principal consultant at CSA Global. The work was initially, we were initially engaged by Karora Resources to do this geological model and develop some quality exploration targets. We thank Karora Resources for engaging us in the first place, and of course, for the permission to present to you today. So what are we talking about today? First, we'll think about what the problem is, and then work through what we actually did. Talk about the introduction to the Sleuth trend, the controls on gold mineralization at the Paleo gold mine as a type example. Then get on to the integrated geological model, interpret the model, and generate some drill targets. So the problem really is for us all, I guess, and it becomes increasingly more common, is that we are looking for new search space in order to have some exploration success. And of course, the new search space in many cases ends up being under younger cover. It gets a bit worse when we think about exploring under salt lakes because the costs go straight up. There is in these terrains then of course a dearth of data. We haven't got enough data. We can't see an outcrop. We can't do any measurements. On it goes. We have clearly a problem, and we have to somehow try and deal with it. And of course, the costs in undercover exploration, as we all know, go straight through the roof. So out of that, we want to find a way to maximize our knowledge and improve the target generation to a level that we know we have done the best we can in order to justify our targets and hopefully then end up with a better success rate in the drilling. So our task in this case is to complete an integrated geological interpretation of the Sleuth trend, which is largely on a salt lake, and we want to use all the available data and want to work out the best targets we can. We'll use the Paleo open pit mine as a type example of the structurally controlled or structurally hosted gold mineralization in the Sleuth trend and build that into the model, and then end up hopefully with some targets for primary gold mineralization. In order to get there, Karora provided us with a number of data sets, including the drill hole database, all sorts of geophysical data, gravity magnetics, all sorts of geological interpretation files of previous workers in the Sleuth trend, previous interpretations, and of course, geochemistry files, and a mine model, leapfrog mine model for the Paleo gold mine. To the right, we have the Sleuth trend and some of the and all of the previous drilling coverage, which is part of what we're going to use in the model. The gold mineralization in the Sleuth trend is a orogenic type gold mineralization hosted in quartz veins, and it's quite frequently hosted along the sheared contacts between the Paringa basalt and black flag sediments and volcanoclastic rocks. The dominant shear zone is the Zuleika shear zone, which pretty much follows this Paringa black flag contact, and the mineralization is hosted proximal to the Zuleika shear zone. So it's not terribly new. We've got a big transcrustal shear zone, and somewhere in the second, third order structures, we'll see the mineralization precipitated and hopefully forming enough accumulations to be economic. The workflow in the 3D model, we started off with interpreting the geophysical data sets, looking at lithologies, looking at structures, trying to set up the larger scale model. We went through a simplification of the geological drill hole logging so that we can produce a coherent lithological solid geology model. Built an interpreted structural framework to understand our structural controls. Simplified solid lithological model, then went back and used the drill hole logging to build a regolith and Paleo channel model, and I'll come back to that, why that is actually quite interesting in the end. Do an interpretation of the bottom of hole and down hole geochemical data, and lucky enough there were good proportion of the drilling actually had a bottom of hole sample with a multi-element 4-acid geochemistry, which allowed us in the end to do a principal component analysis and the lithogeochemical interpretation of the lithologies. Integrate all these data sets into a single 3D geological and structural model, and interpret drill targets using the integrated model. The gold mine, Steve did a fair bit of relogging of the diamond core, interpreted the 3D environment, used statistical correlations of structural measurements and vein types with gold mineralization, and out of that, the conclusion was drawn that east-dipping shears along the black flag Paringa contact are critical for mineralization, and north striking subvertical shear veins are hosting most of the mineralization. The 3D model was initially a regional scale model, which is the big one, and then we nested into it 6 smaller scale models, which allowed us to have more detail in the smaller models, which then aided the interpretation on the local scale. The output is the regional model, 6 detailed integrated lithostructural framework models, and the regional Paleo channel models. The important thing is that you can update these models as new data become available very, very quickly, and new interpretations can be drawn as you go along. Here's a screenshot of part of the model we can see the interpreted structures, for example, the silica or other shear zones. We see the full lithosolid solid geology model, and that allows us to go into the model at any point, section it, interpret it, and move on to the next part. We've done as I mentioned earlier, we've done the Paleo Channel model, and that's basically the surface for the bottom of the salt lake, and we can see quite nicely that we see the Paleo Channels developing. There's mineralization in parts of the Paleo Channel, and we modeled that as well. And it correlates pretty well with the previous interpretation of the gravity showing the Paleo Channels. Another screenshot of the Paleo Channels, just to show why it is actually an interesting game to play. Reason being is the Paleo Channels as a starter follow previous weaknesses, structures in the basement. We also see mineralization, so the background is gold in the Paleo Channel model, and so we can start worrying about where is the gold actually coming from, in part to find other Paleo Channels, but more importantly, the secondary mineralization needs to come from somewhere, and that is the primary source we are after. We then interpreted the bottom of hole multi-element geochemistry, and that's just an example with a principal component analysis where you basically investigate the correlation between all the elements with respect to each other, and out of that was a particular principal component which was related to gold mineralization, and we can plot that. As a grid, and there's a number of targets popping up which are interesting to investigate. The whole model was all integrated. The different data sets initially interpreted separately from each other, and when we brought them back into the 3D environment and combined them all into one model, we could investigate whether different data sets and interpretations actually support each other or cancel each other out. Now, in this case, you can see quite nicely there's a structural model, and it's down in the monsoon area, and the background is the principal component 2 in this case, another gold associated element association, and the gold principal component follows quite nicely the structures as they were interpreted from other data sets. Out of that, we can recognize that probably these northeast trending structures are actually quite important in hosting at least part of the mineralization, and we can make a call as to where some interesting targets might be to follow up with the drilling. And these targets are now not only based on geochemistry, they are based on structures, and in part utilized also the Paleo Channel interpretation. We also can start worrying about, was our previous drilling actually effective, or did we miss some of the mineralization potentially? And I'm just going to home in on an oblique model in this area. So we are looking to the northeast, and there was some holes drilled to the southeast, and then a large number of drill holes drilled to the northwest. The mineralization is preferentially recorded in the holes drilled to the southeast, whereas the holes drilled to the northwest actually don't show much mineralization. Now, that clearly is a call sign for have another look at this and design some holes in a different orientation to try and work out whether we actually missed a great majority of the mineralization because we drilled potentially into the wrong direction. So that gets us to some conclusions. The exploration undercover, for simply because it's very cost intensive, requires that we maximize the understanding of all the existing data, and we want to investigate these data against each other so we get more confidence into our interpretation. The data sets are initially interpreted separately so that we don't kid ourselves, and then bring them together. The data sets are integrated and validated. The modeling of the data sets in a 3D environment provides the ideal platform to assemble disparate data sets. It allows us to go through all the data sets and interpret them together. And the 3D targeting can be rapidly updated and reinterpreted as required. So most importantly, the study shows that we have encouraging exploration targets in the most cost-effective manner. And that's my talk for today. If there's any queries, my email is at the bottom here, and I'm happy to take any questions if there's time for that.
We're out of time for questions, but Peter is easily identified with that jacket, so you can catch up with him over morning tea. Thank you, Peter. Trigg Mining Ltd is exploring for the essential potassium mineral fertilizer, sulfate of potash or potassium sulfate, which provides necessary nutrients for agricultural production and human nutrition. Keren Patterson is Managing Director and CEO of Trigg Mining, and she joins us now. Morning, Keren.
Well, good morning, and thank you for coming in bright and early on this third and final day of the conference. In preparing for today's presentation, I've been reflecting on where Trig was this time last year. We were very much an exploration company. We were testing the hypothesis that Lake Throssell could be a large sulfate of potash deposit, and we're putting the very first air core holes into this project ever. Lake Throssell is a truly greenfields discovery, and one that has challenged our thinking at every milestone on both quality and magnitude of this remarkable project. But firstly, why sulfate of potash at a conference when you're mostly hearing about metals? Potassium exists in every single living cell. Without it, we simply wouldn't exist. Potassium and sulfur are two of the 4 macronutrients absolutely essential for plant growth and human nutrition. SOP is a premium product. It provides only nutrients the plants need and nothing else. Unlike muriate, its cousin, a much larger market, it's about 70 million tonnes a year consumed of muriate versus 7 of sulfate of potash, just because we can't supply the world with enough sulfate of potash. Muriate contains 50% chloride, which is detrimental to plants, soils, waterways, and microorganisms. So it's not a friendly agricultural fertiliser, but it's used because that's what's available. It will also have an increasingly important role in climate change mitigation, as it promotes increased root yield, capturing more carbon in the soil and allowing farmers to create carbon sinks while still producing the food that the growing world population needs. And we need a lot more of it. So where are our projects? They're in our backyard here in Western Australia, in the Eastern Goldfields. They lie from about 170 kilometres east of Laverton, and our flagship project, Lake Throssell, lies adjacent to the Great Central Road. This road is being upgraded and bitumised to become the Outback Highway and that third Trans-Australian trade route, which we've all been hearing about lately as we see our supermarket shelves empty. This is increasingly important for sustaining our economy here in Western Australia. And that provides Trigg and Lake Throstle, a bitumen and rail corridor all the way through Australian and international markets. So Lake Throstle and our large high-grade SOP discovery. In fact, if I was talking about a metalliferous deposit here, you would all be looking on in awe. It might not be metallic though, but it comes in solution, ready-made. We're talking about an aquifer, hosted deposit. So we've just heard technically about Paleo Channels and looking for gold with the Paleo Channels. This is a big paleo valley that contains the electrolytes that we need for nutrition and plant growth. And it's suspended already there in the solution. So what I'm talking about is a drainable resource, so the portion that can be pumped out, which is a much smaller subset of the in situ resource. And through a maiden resource announcement and 2 resource upgrades last year, we have identified 14.4 million tonnes of sulphate of potash, including a 4.2 million tonne indicated resource. Additional tenure surrounding the one in which we've drilled upgraded it twice and then published a very high quality scoping study in October last year. The highlights of this indicates that are the basis of the outcome of that scoping study, drawing on 41% of that drainable resource, delivers us 245,000 tonnes per annum for an initial mine life of 21 years. And at US $550 a tonne price assumption, and this is important, I'll talk about that shortly, it delivers an NPV of 364 million and an annual EBITDA of 97 million, with a 4.5-year payback from first production. This makes Lake Throstle a potential top 10 global sulphate of potash producer. In fact, if you look at the natural brine sources, it puts it in the top 6. And this is important because the current supply of SOP predominantly comes from a chemical process where they buy muriate of potash, potassium chloride, they then buy sulfuric acid, H2SO4, heat it to 800 degrees in a furnace, and then produce a manufactured SOP after consuming all of that energy. And then for every tonne of SOP, there's 1.2 tonnes of hydrochloric acid that then needs to be dealt with, disposed of. So this is really taxing on the environment. And this is what we're doing to produce our food. Importantly as well, we all need to be economically sustainable with our projects. And having that natural endowment of a brine resource, solar evaporation, this puts Lake Throstle in the bottom quartile of global production and well below the price floor that Mannheim process creates. This is also a booming commodity market. We all need more food from less arable land. And what is happening globally is all of the inputs for our agricultural output are booming. In the last 12 months, you can see nitrogen up 200%, muriate up almost 200%, SOP up 76%, phosphate 66%. This is a booming sector. And if you look on the left-hand side, the statistics there show with SOP now at $900 a tonne at benchmark prices, it increases our NPV quite substantially. For every 10% increase in that price, we have a $144 million impact. This is it's about environmentally lower footprint project. And we're not talking about an open pit here. There is no rock waste dump. There's not even a tailings storage facility. Most of the infrastructure will stay on the lake, which gives us a very light environmental footprint. Productions from trenches and bores, giving us lots of flexibility over the mine life, starting with 22 bores and increasing that to 112 over the mine life. As I said, this is a big deposit. It's 5 kilometres wide. So far, we've drilled 36 kilometres of it. We've got 70 kilometres now under tenure, and it's up to 150 metres deep. So just think about a massive bathtub full of sand and gravels, and we can pump the water out of that without digging up the channel. So this is truly a sustainable natural resource project. We are harvesting naturally occurring brine. There is no large open pit, rock waste dump or tailings storage facility. We are harvesting solar energy through evaporation and also through energy production. And that gives us a low carbon footprint of about 0.17 tonnes of CO2 equivalent per tonne of SOP. And the pre-feasibility study will be looking at ways to minimise that further. Agriculturally, this is a high quality project, efficient potassium supply for plants and our food. Carbon farming outcomes, we can increase or have a greater impact on climate mitigation through increasing the root density of our broadacre crops. Soil and waterway health, if we substitute muriate and put sulfate of potash on those crops and those soils, we're going to have better sustainable outcomes. Drought tolerance of crops increases, frost resistance increases, the quality. So when you get a tomato and it's full of flavour and juiciness, that's full of potassium versus the one that's floury and watery and tasteless. Nutritional benefit. We need 4,700 milligrams per day in our diet of potassium, and we get that from our food. Socially, this is a long mine life project, initial life of 21 years, which gives us great opportunity to create sustained community projects. Obviously, this is a new industry for Western Australia too, so it increases state and federal taxes, native title and state royalty payments as well. Mine closure planning, as we're all doing from the beginning, and the company was founded by a woman, and we have 50% of our board and leadership team are now women. Governance is incredibly important with all of this. It's all about transparency and having contemporary practices in our business. So at Trig, we are truly delivering on our purpose to build natural resource projects communities can be proud of. So what's coming up next? Well, the pre-feasibility study, we have shifted into that development timetable for Lake Throssell. So we've already started a lot of the baseline work for the environmental documents and environmental approval. In fact, we have already 12 months of baseline surveys complete. So continuing that part of the process. Resource planning, we've got a lot of field work yet to go. Resource upgrade work, we need to put in water bores this year. Start pump testing that basal aquifer. So that we can convert this resource to an ore reserve as part of the pre-feasibility study. We've also commenced evaporation trials, and that will continue through to optimise the process flow sheet. And of course, we need to do the engineering with at this stage an anticipated final investment decision in 2025. But there is more to this story. This time last year, we didn't have these additional tenements. We've pegged Lake Yeo, which is in the same interpreted Paleo Valley as Lake Throssell, just 35 k's to the south. It's even a longer strike length under tenure with this one, and 2 of those tenements to the east have been granted. So we got out there straight away in December last year, and we've done the first of the some ground gravity work. It hasn't yet been interpreted. We're waiting on those results. We anticipate getting that out before the end of the quarter. But what this is telling us from the same work that we did to create the hypothesis of Lake Throssell is this could be a Lake Throssell repeat based on the radiometric potassium and the acid gypsum index for sulfate. And that's the surface representation of what there may be underneath in the valley. So there's a lot more work to do, much bigger story to come. And we can't wait to see what is happening out there in this Greenfields project. So in summary, in many ways, the corporate structure has expanded quite a bit since this time last year. We've appointed Marie and Rod to the board, both very experienced directors, mine builders. They really know what they're doing, and that's created a lot of wealth of experience on our board. And our leadership team, we're attracting really passionate people that really want to deliver on our purpose. We've just completed a rights issue, which gives us approximately 7 million cash in the bank as we start this field season. So we're at the starting block, and we can't wait to get out there and get running on this. And with a market cap of $12 million, you can see that we are absolutely leveraged to the upside when we're talking about a project with a current NPV of 364 million. So in summary, Lake Throssell is set to become a top 10 global sulfate of potash producer in the lowest cost quartile. It has outstanding economics over 21 initial mine life. 21-year initial mine life. We are located in the world-class mining jurisdiction of Western Australia, and this is potentially an Australian-made premium natural potassium fertiliser with low greenhouse gas emissions, suitable for all agriculture. It is about global megatrends. We are increasing the global population. We are reducing the areas of arable land. We need more and more food from less. And we're producing these days already 50% of our food is directly associated with mineral fertilisers. And it's also going to become increasingly important when we start talking about climate change, because by increasing that root growth in the broadacre crop while we're manufacturing food, we can increase the carbon sequestration on farms and have quite a substantial impact on climate change. So the pre-feasibility study, as I said, is already underway on Lake Throssell. We have shifted from explorer to developer in the last 12 months, although we still have a lot of exploration work to do, and there's significant upside as we continue to explore Lake Throssell and Lake Yeo sulphate of potash projects. So if you'd like to know more, I'll be at the booth, and thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you, Keren. Gateway Mining is a WA-focused mineral exploration company targeting large-scale quality gold deposits at its Gidgee Gold project. Mark Cossom is Managing Director and has been since October 2019, and he joins us now with the Gateway story. Welcome along, Mark.
Thanks, Jerry, and thanks to RIU and the sponsors for putting this great conference on, and for the audience online and here in person for tuning in to listen to the story. So I guess just want to give a bit of an update on Gateway and what's been going on, and then what's coming up in the future for what's proving to be a pivotal year for Gateway. Gateway's been around for a while, but really the company itself was reset back in 2017 to become essentially a single asset company focused on gold exploration at our Gidgee Gold project. So this project, it's a pretty substantial land holding in the Murchison gold region of WA, about 1,000 square kilometres we've got under tenure. Some historic mining in the area. There was 5 little open pits mined there between 1988 and 1993 by Herald Resources. But really, for various reasons, the project itself sat pretty idle up until, the last sort of 5 or 6 years from an exploration point of view. So, for a great bit of ground in a key part of WA goldfields, it's starting from a long way back in terms of its maturity. And that's pretty important when we look at the work that we're doing and the opportunity that's presented here. 2021 was a key year for Gateway and for the Gidgee Gold projects. We announced an 87% increase in our mineral resources, which was really coming on the back of about 1.5 years worth of drilling. But one of the exciting things about that resource increase, apart from the fact we added ounces and added to the quality of those ounces with indicated resources for the first time. But really what we saw was initial mineral resource estimates for some brand new discoveries. So moving away from these old pits that were mined previously, taking the knowledge from those deposits and applying them to finding new deposits in the area. And this really highlights the prospectivity of this project. And then going forward from there in 2022, it's an exciting year for us. We're building on that knowledge and building on that sort of confidence we've gained in the project. We've got 3 new targets coming up. We've got a lot of drilling planned this year. These new targets and where we're focusing our work is important to show that these are all within 5 kilometres of each other. So while it's a big project, the focus of our work now is pretty complementary to each other, and that's key for the project going forward and for its potential. We've got the money in the bank, and not only that, we've got the team to carry out this work. So brief summary of the corporate structure. Market cap of about $29 million with just under 450,000 ounces in resource. We got some pretty substantial shareholders there, and they're loyal shareholders. Most of them come in with the reset of the company back in 2017, 2018. Kerry Hermanis, they're our major shareholder, and they've continued to support the company over time. With our recent capital raising in November last year, they were very supportive, and they see the potential of this project in the long term. So we've got about $6 million in cash, but importantly in resetting the company to just focus on Gidgee and divesting some of the other projects we had, we've ended up with this listed share portfolio of now worth just under $2 million. So that's important to keep in the back of our pocket as well. The board is a successful and experienced management team. Not only that, with a wide variety of skills on the boards. Myself, I'm a geologist, about 24 years experience. mainly in the mining and project development side of things, but also in regional exploration, formerly at Gateway Minerals and also Harmony Gold, one of the big South African miners. Deb Fullerton there, current CEO of Westgold as well. And then also Pete Langworthy, who was instrumental in putting the project together and rebooting Gateway, is still involved with the company in a pretty intense way as one of our key consultants. So the location of Gidgee, you can see there in the orange, just north of Sandstone, what we like to call the Middle Murchison, but really between the Murchison belt out there, controlled by Westgold and Ramelius, Andy Wellmold stomping ground up there. And then over to the east of us, we've got Walloona, the Bellevue guys, and Lawlers Agnew. So a key part of WA. There's a lot of infrastructure in place there, a lot of operating gold mines, historical gold production. Pretty much this is a tier 1 exploration area. So I mentioned before our resource growth last year, 87% increase to just shy of 450,000 ounces. We just couldn't quite get that last 1,000 ounce over the line. But importantly, most of our resources, or just about all of them, are within the top 100 metres. So that's shallow, high-grade ounces, important from an economic point of view going forward. And as I mentioned before, this project and its maturity, we're not chasing deep ounces here. This is not a complex story. This is really simple, low-hanging fruit. We've got a high-grade indicated resource now of 81,000 ounces at just under 3.5 grams. And also, I mentioned before, we've got 2 new discoveries we brought onto the resource inventory for the first time at Evermore and Achilles North. These are shallow resources. Again, they're new discoveries away from the old mining areas and really highlight the potential here to grow the project. Montague, which is our biggest resource, 163,000 ounces. This is a remnant resource under one of the old pits, mined between 88 and 92. Includes a pretty high-grade core there, just under 4 grams per tonne. This is really a shallow dipping ore body. It's only a little pit that was mined there. It's only down to about 40 metres deep. All the met work we've done here has indicated it's a free milling ore type, located on a granted mining lease, which is great. But not only that, the work we did over particularly last 12 months, highlighted a lot of mineralisation, remnant mineralisation in that pink rock there, the granodiorite. That this deposit straddles the contact of the basalt and the granodiorite. These granodiorite lodes haven't really been explored for previously, and we've included some of these lodes in the mineral resource now, but the scope for chasing these out further along strike is huge. It's really been an ignored part of this resource, and that's really the scope to grow this further. And again, keep harping on about it, but it's still shallow where we're chasing these things. We're not going down deep yet. Evermore, this is one of our new deposits that we found, 67,000 ounces, and this is really the same contact zone on that Montague granodiorite. There we can see a bit of an oblique view of the granodiorite intrusion in pink, and where Montague Boulder sits, Whistler, which is one of our other resources under an old pit that was mined. And Evermore was really the culmination of the understanding we had at Montague and where we thought things were going and interpreting the previous historical drilling. We continued to chase it out along strike and found this new deposit, again, never previously mined, pretty much within the top 100 metres, most of the ounces there. But importantly, it's still open along strike to the north there. We did some drilling we released in December, 21 metres at 1.7 in the nose of the granodiorite there. And that's really where the mineralisation trend from Evermore starts to turn around towards Whistler on the eastern side there. So there's a lot of scope there to continue chasing this mineralisation out and delineating more gold. Another one of the new resources we did is Achilles North Airport. These are shallow oxide deposits. Achilles North is directly along strike from a little pit that was mined in 92 called Rosie. Gateway's work that they started in 2019 was really just to keep chasing this out along strike. Again, pretty simple exploration. Just continue to drill north. We've carried this over about 500 metres so far, and it's still open to the north. Can see from some of those intercepts, we're talking about stuff that pretty much starts at surface or just below the transported overburden. So really low-hanging fruit, simple exploration, cheap drilling, and going forward, has a lot of upside. But excitingly coming forward and moving forward with the company and building on that resource base that we've put there, where we can already expand those resources, but really to add to them substantially is continue to add these new discoveries. And so we're maintaining our focus, our discipline of looking within this 5-kilometre radius of our resources. So they're all sort of complementary, but Julia's there, Kashmir and Monarch, sort of take you through them now and show you the work that we're going to be doing over the next 12 months. So Julia's, This was actually first discovered by Gateway back in 2008, and it was sort of come off the back of some base metal exploration that was going on at the time. But this is a shallow oxide trend on the contact with some sediments and volcanic rocks. It's on a granted mining lease again. Can see from some of those intercepts we've got there, and we released some back in January from drilling we did November, December. Nice, thick, shallow intercepts, the high 2s, low 3 grams per tonne. It's a straightforward supergene deposit, nice flat-lying lode at a redox front. But not only that little box there, that's where the majority of that RC work has been done over about 500 metres. But off to the south, we've chased it out over another sort of 800 metres with air core. We're still getting shallow intercepts there, supergene mineralisation. And then off to the northeast, you can see that it's open. There was a historical tenement boundary there, which doesn't exist anymore. It's all under Gateway's tenure, but there's no drilling there. So we've got the air core rig up on site now, and that's where it's going straight away. We're going to continue to chase that trend out along strike. There's real potential here for a substantial oxide deposit, averages around sort of 50 metres below surface. So this is exciting for us, good grade, easy mineralisation. Kashmir, this sits along strike of the Howards deposit owned by Horizon Gold, our neighbours. You can see that tenement boundary there. This is a steep dipping shear zone in a basalt unit off on the eastern side of the granodiorite. And that's important because this eastern contact has really been ignored historically. A lot of the drilling previously is up on that northwestern side where Evermore and Montague Boulder is. But this eastern side has really been ignored. There's mineralisation at Howards, 200,000 odd ounces. There's a lot of workings up on the eastern contact. We just come in, had a big soil anomaly there over about 2.5 kilometres. Did some initial RC work in late 2019, got some mineralisation, then followed it up last year with some work in November. And you can see there that, wide zones of shallow mineralisation, moderate grade, but that's consistent with Howards. And with the geophysics that we see there, we can trace that mineralisation for a further kilometre, or that potential for mineralisation for a further kilometre along strike. And as I said, the tenor of grade that we're intersecting is completely consistent with what's down there and Horizon's got down at Howards. Monarch, this is another great target. This sits a bit further to the east of Kashmir. This is in some slightly different rocks out to the eastern side. A lot of historical mining carried out at Monarch back in the 1930s. There's head frames everywhere and remnants of that activity. But really, there's been no exploration carried out there of any sort of note. There was 5 RC holes drilled by Herald in 1985, and amazingly, when we went back, nothing else has been done. So we put a pretty substantial soil sample grid out there. You can see we generated this anomaly over about just under 6 kilometres. The guys, when they're taking the soil sampling and mapping out there, took some rock chip samples of outcropping mineralisation, quartz vein mineralisation, getting rock chips up to nearly 19 grams per tonne at surface. And again, with no real exploration carried out of any sort in a modern sense. So we've got an RC rig turning up in March, and we'll be starting to put some holes into Monarch. But this is a brand new target, completely undrilled, and it's still open off to the south. There's a big creek system down there, and we've got the air core rig that's on site now. It's going to continue to chase out that trend to the south. So this has real potential out here, and who knows what we might find. So the bigger picture with Gateway and the project going forward, I mentioned this year we've got a pretty substantial drill campaign plan. So over the year, we're planning to drill up to 60,000 metres of sort of air core and RC with a little bit of diamond in there as well. We've got an initial program kicking off the other day with an air core rig, Julia's, bit of work at Monarch, as I mentioned, the RC rig coming in November. We're putting a pretty decent sort of initial resource pattern over that main Julia's trend, as well as some more work at Kashmir and Monarch. And then going forward, we'll continue to keep drilling through the year, announcing those results, working these targets up to really show the next stepping stone in our resource, getting it up further. That should be early in the new financial year. Beyond that, and in the longer term, we've got 1,000 square kilometres under tenure here. It's a historically pretty prolific producing belt that for one reason or another has kind of dropped off the radar. We've got a lot of coverage of these mineralised trends. That black box you can see there, that's the area that we've been talking about to date. So that's where our main resources are. But there's plenty of scope there for longer term building up of targets keeping adding to this pipeline and showing the prospectivity of this project for Gateway shareholders. So in summary, and the key takeaways for Gateway and why we think it's such a great place to invest your money and to keep watching on us, we've got a fantastic land package in a great part of WA, the WA Goldfields, which is really a tier 1 gold exploration district on a world scale. We've got plenty of work coming. We've got the cash to carry out that work and to take this project forward and really continue to grow this resource that we've already added to over the last 18 months. And to keep those stepping stones towards some sort of commercialisation decision down the track. But we really want to realise the potential of this project, and we really think it's got real significance. And we've got the team in place to do it. We've got a team that's experienced in grassroots exploration, gold exploration, evaluation of projects, and building mines and operating. So we've got the people in place. We've got the backing of a great set of shareholders. We've got the money in place, and we've got the project. So that's all the ingredients we need. Thanks for your time. And if you have any questions, I've got the booth out the front there. Thank you.
Thank you. Greenstone Resources is an emerging gold explorer and producer focused on the Burbanks Gold Project in Western Australia, which has historically produced over 324,000 ounces at 23 grams per tonne. Since resuming exploration late last year, the new team have already made 2 new discoveries and completed their first gold pour. Here to tell us more is Greenstone's CEO and MD, Chris Hansen. Welcome along, Chris.
Thank you, and good morning, and thank you very much all for joining today's session. Look, before we get started and step through the story, I wanted to give a very brief summary of the past 6 months, which I think then flows very nicely for what we're looking to do over the next 6 months. Prior to joining Greenstone, I'd largely worked within the mining private equity sector, where I held a number of senior roles, identifying and supporting projects through the development cycle. However, having always wanted to take an asset from discovery all the way through to commercial production, I put out the feelers about 6 months ago and looked at a whole host of different opportunities, all of which I must say had market capitalizations much greater off Greenstone Resources even now and at the time 6 months ago. However, it was the Burbanks Gold Project that was buried in the back of Greenstone's asset portfolio which attracted me to the company. And having reviewed well over 500 different projects in the metals and mining sector over the past 8 or 9 years, I knew that this was a very rare opportunity. The facts for me are very simple. This is a very high-grade system with proven production and limited exploration below 250 metres. Historically, the Burbanks project has produced over 420,000 ounces at an average grade of 10.9 grams per tonne, and all of that production is largely from the upper 140 metres. This also includes 324,000 ounces at 22.7 grams per tonne from the underground alone. Just to put that into a little bit of context for everybody, that's a grade that's 4 to 5 times higher than the average underground gold mine in Australia that's currently mining. In my view, this is the typical story of an excellent asset, but for whatever reason has had the wrong strategy and the wrong focus for the past 2 or 3 decades. Over the past 6 months since joining, the new board and the new management have been working very hard to unlock this latent value. And that's included the appointment of a new board and management team, corporate rebranding, recapitalisation and shareholder consolidation. And that's resulted in, more recently, 2 new discoveries at both Burbanks North and Burbanks South, serving to extend our mineralised strike horizon from circa 2 kilometres to well over 4.5 kilometres now. And recently, we just announced our first maiden gold pour, which returned over $2.1 million in revenue to the joint venture. So look, that's the bridge story of the past 6 months. And now looking forward, I'll walk you through the projects and what the next 6 months will look like for the company. And a disclaimer, which I'll perhaps leave to you to read in your own time. Despite the company IPOing well over 20 years ago, Greenstone still has a very well-preserved and clean capital structure. There's only, 2 material updates to mention here. Following yesterday's capital raise, where we raised $3.5 million, the shares on issue will increase to around 925 million shares, and our cash position will increase to around $495 million. $4.95 million, leaving us well funded for the next round of exploration. As part of the broader corporate rejuvenation process over the past 6 months, we've brought in 3 new directors, including myself. Importantly, Mike Edwards, who is our new chairman. Mike is a geologist by trade and capital market specialist, and was formerly the chairman over at Firefly Resources before merging with Gascoigne. Glenn Poole is our technical director and chief geologist. Glenn is a career geologist, an ex-Northern Star, and brings a very unique skill set to the organisation, covering both exploration geology and resource definition. Importantly for us, Glenn also worked out at the Kundana operations, which is around 25 kilometres north of us, previously owned by Northern Star, and is very much probably the closest and most direct analogue for what we're dealing with at Burbanks at the moment. Investment highlights. So I do say we've got a polymetallic portfolio. We have 2 principal gold assets centred on Coolgardie, the Burbanks Gold Project, which is our flagship gold asset, and the Phillips Fine Project. Outside of that, we also have the Mount Thirsty Cobalt Project, which has been the principal focus for the company for the preceding 12 years prior to the new board and management team starting. We do currently have a small trial underground mining operation underway, which I'll touch on later on in the presentation. And as mentioned earlier, we recently completed our first gold pour. The key point of differentiation for what the new team's going to do differently is exploration, and we have a very aggressive exploration program underway at the moment, recently announcing the recommencement of 6,500 metres of reverse circulation and diamond drilling at our Burbanks Gold Project. And as mentioned, we also have a long life cobalt asset, the Mount Thirsty Cobalt Project, which I'll again touch on later in today's presentation. Focusing now more directly on our 2 gold assets. Burbanks is very much our flagship gold assets. It's located just 35 minutes south of Kalgoorlie, which is obviously the epicentre of West Australian gold mining. Importantly for us, this means that the project is supported by a network of existing infrastructure, including sealed road access to site, grid power, and 3 toll treatment plants within a 50-kilometre radius of the mining licence. As mentioned earlier, Burbanks has a very long history of high-grade and shallow production, which has totaled over 420,000 ounces. And we do have an initial resource of 145,000 ounces across the project area. I would very much caveat that there's been a significant amount of reverse circulation and diamond drilling completed over the past 2 years, which hasn't been included in that more recent resource update. Importantly for us, however, is that mineralisation still remains open at depth beneath the historic mining centre, and that very little exploration has been undertaken below about 100 metres outside of that area. Given all of this prospectivity, we have a very aggressive exploration program currently underway, with drilling starting just over a week or 2 ago now. Outside of Burbanks, we also have the Phillips Fine Project. It's still very much a focus for the company. Located 75 kilometres northwest of Coolgardie. It was a historic mining centre in its own right, historically producing close to 35,000 ounces between 3 open pits, and mineralisation still remains open beneath all of those open pits. I won't spend too long talking through the history of the Burbanks Gold Project, but I think it is very important to understand why these assets have sat here for so long, underexplored and underdeveloped. And from my perspective, there's really 2 reasons. The first one's very much a corporate reason or corporate focus. So the previous focus for Greenstone for the past 12 years had very much been on the Mount Thirsty Cobalt Project. And the second reason is really around strategy for the past 2 decades. So when Greenstone have had these assets, and when they have gone and done work on them, principally it's been focused on small scale and near-term cash flow generation. Unfortunately, whilst it served to preserve the capital structure of the company over that time, there was never really enough money to reinvest back into exploration at depth. And I guess that's what's presented this opportunity for us here today. I always like to include this slide in the presentation because I think it really demonstrates the true potential that we're dealing with here at Burbanks, with the average depth of mining and historical mining only down to 140 metres. whereas other gold mines across Australia will comfortably mine down to depths in excess of 800 to 1200 metres. As such, the exploration horizon beneath the existing workings, in our perspective, is immense, and that's without touching the broader 4-kilometre strike of the project area. This is arguably the most important slide, I think, in the entire presentation. So what we're looking at here is a long section, 4 kilometres from left to right, following the main mineralising structure, the Burbanks shear zone. In the centre of the project, you'll see the Birthday Gift deposit and the main lode deposit, or what we call the Burbanks Mining Centre, which has a strike extent of around 2 kilometres. The Birthday Gift and main lode underground mines historically produced close to 300 or over 320,000 ounces, of which there was very much a high-grade core at Birthday Gift, where over 180,000 ounces was produced at 27.4 grams per tonne from the top 110 metres. Importantly, within the historic mining areas of both Birthday Gift and main lode, these areas were only mined down to 110 and 275 metres respectively, and both having very little exploration below 250 metres, despite us already knowing that high-grade mineralisation remains open at depth. Additionally, there are large areas both to the north and to the south of the Burbanks Mining Centre, which have seen very, very little exploration, below about 100 metres, and had been the focus of the recent exploration program late last year. Given this very limited amount of exploration, we're now undertaking a very aggressive exploration campaign at Burbanks. We recently completed just over 4,000 metres late last year, and we're embarking on another 6,500 metres drilling currently. Importantly for me, when I look at these high-grade systems, is these aren't narrow ore bodies. The average width of mining historically was anywhere between 1.9 to 2.4 metres, so it's very amenable to mechanised underground mining methods. Part of the trial mining operation, we have had twin boom and single boom jumbos underground quite successfully. So the next 4 slides will successively step through each one of the 4 main exploration centres. So Burbanks North, from our perspective, is, I think, the most promising and exciting exploration target that we currently have that we're currently exploring. Late last year, we proved that high-grade mineralisation exists beyond what we've termed the Northern Fault. More importantly, over the Christmas New Year period, we undertook a very detailed geological reinterpretation of some historical drilling that was done near surface and supports a small oxide resource. What we found was 3 high-grade plunges developing near surface, which have never been followed up on at depth. And there's some absolutely phenomenal intercepts sitting in things like 5 metres at 25 grams per tonne from 17 metres. But we currently have an exploration program planned with Trig due to turn up. We'll start drilling there within the next 2 to 3 weeks, and we have over 10 holes planned for that area. Main lode is one of the 2 historic mining centres. Again, high-grade underground mining. In terms of forward-looking exploration, the multi-purpose drill rig is currently drilling the 4 northern holes that you see directly beneath the main lode. On the completion of those holes, the drill rig will then move to Burbanks North. Birthday Gift, as I mentioned earlier, was the higher grade of the 2 deposits, where they mined 180,000 ounces at 27.4 grams. Importantly for us, mining ceased at 110 metres, but there's a shaft down to around 275 metres, which was never mined, but confirms that high-grade mineralisation is still open at depth. We have an existing resource over Birthday Gift of 95,000 ounces at 5.6 grams per tonne, and we know that there's a number of high-grade and underexplored footwall lodes, which were previously identified mining activities, but historically have never been a focus. And some of the highest grade intercepts that we've drilled across the project have come from those footwall intercepts, things like 4.7 metres and 462 grams. And Burbanks South was the second of the 2 discoveries which we announced late last year. This is a virgin area which has never seen any historical mining activities, and it's a continuation of the same mineralised structure. What we identified was 3 parallel lodes of mineralisation, which are continuous over a strike of 400 metres and drilled down to a depth of only 100 metres currently, remains open in all direction. This will be, again, a focus for us going forward, and we hope to be back in there within the next 4 to 6 months. have mentioned earlier that we do currently have a trial mining agreement operation underway with our joint venture partner, FMR. And we had recently completed our first gold pour just about 6 weeks ago, pouring 840 ounces with around $2.1 million. The great thing about this joint venture for us is our JV partner assumes all of the mining financial risk before profits then split 50-50. All the underground development here is now largely complete, and we're now moving into scoping activities, and we expect an additional 60 to 75,000 tonnes of high-grade mined and processed over the next 6 months. The real purpose of this underground mining operation is to provide us with valuable technical information which will be used to guide future production decisions across the project. Phillips Find is the second gold asset which sits within our portfolio. As mentioned, this is around 75 kilometres north west of Coolgardie. There was historic production here from 3 open pits collectively mining 33,000 ounces. We did complete a program here late last year and turned up some really nice intercepts. We'll be back in here at some point this year testing those. Final part of the puzzle, I guess, is the Mount Versus Cobalt Asset, which in a very short summary is fundamentally a very good asset. One thing that's holding the project back and taking the next step forward is the fragment ownership structure. So we're working very hard in the background to bring those 3 pieces of the puzzle back together again. In the background, we're also looking at a number of optimization studies to produce the project up, improve the project. That's really centered around increasing the recoveries of both the nickel and the cobalt, but also looking at potentially going further downstream to produce Trigg precursors that we can utilize in the sector. So that's the story. I thank you all very much for your time today. Thank you.
Ausgold is aiming to become Australia's next mid-tier gold producer through its flagship Keren gold project here in WA. The project currently holds a JORC resource of 1.84 million ounces of gold. The large-scale drilling program in train focused on unlocking the multi-million ounce potential across the company's 4,000 square kilometres of greenstone belt in the South Yilgarn. Ausgold MD Matthew Greentree will outline the company's massive opportunity for investors. Welcome along, Matthew.
And what you see up on this screen is that the focus of the Keren Gold project. You can see that we've been doing a lot of drilling over the last year or so, and we've also embarked on a very large drill campaign over the summer months. And since I was standing here last year, we've added 635,000. So it's really expanding very quickly. I'll take you through where we're at today and where we hope to get to over the next 12 months or so. As stated, we've got a 1.84 million ounce resource, which is a fairly substantial achievement. We added 635,000 ounces over the last year. And we did that at a very low discovery cost of about $10 per ounce. So I think we're kicking goals in every department there. We've got a large number of targets outside the resource areas, but we're working through those alongside our resources allowed. What we're targeting here is a standalone gold operation that will deliver over 100,000 ounces per annum, and we're moving through that studies phase alongside that. So, as we stated, we've got 60,000 metres of drilling underway at the moment. We've got 2 RC rigs on site. We've also got a substantial regional campaign outside our main focus where the resource is located. We're planning a resource upgrade in April this year, and maiden reserve statement in June. So that's the follow-up to pre-feasibilities. We've got a number of other assets, but I won't really dwell on those. If you want to talk about those, please provide with fiber. So just a quick corporate slide there. We've got 1.6 billion shares on issue. We're well funded through this current phase of exploration. We're really just getting on with it. In terms of shareholders, our largest shareholder is Dundee Group out of Canada. The top 20 own 50% of the shares on issue, and the directors hold 15%. So it's a reasonably tight shareholding, despite the number of shares on issue. It's a very competent and well-qualified board of directors. I'm a geologist by training, and I've really been focused on delivering high-quality technical inputs to the exploration, but also as we're moving through those study processes and becoming a developer. So looking at where we sit in the world, the Katanning projects, 30 kilometres outside the township. We've got a large tenement holding around the core project, which are located on mining licenses. We've got over 4,200 square kilometres of tenure, and the reason for that is the strategic location of that surrounding our main resource base. We see a lot of opportunities for discovery. There's a lot of untested targets around our core project. There's also a lot of other potential for blade mafic producers, and that's located around that William Milling project. And you can see there's the proximity in the south Yilgarn, to the north of us there's Neuemer, to the west of us there's Greenbushes, Boddington to the northwest there as well. So it is, I guess, an area of the Yilgarn that's been underdone over time. We're really unlocking the back of that belt. What we're doing with our exploration, you can see there's a number of really high-grade results there. We're following up a lot of those. We've been very successful implementing things like downhole EM. That's been a great tool for this ore body. And we're following up that in the sense that we're building out the resource to take through the feasibility study process, increasing the level of confidence, but also increasing the scale of the project by doing that. Being located in the wheat belt also gives us access to a lot of the infrastructure. There's good power to site. We've sealed roads. The three towns nearby, the biggest being Katanning, has a population of about 2,500. And it really makes working down there a lot easier. We're not a remote setting, and I think there's a lot of support in the community to see this development go ahead. So just looking at that timeline, you can see we're working, I guess, 3 projects in parallel. We've got the regional project, which I'll talk about at the end of the talk. There's a large RC program underway in the central and the southern zone. So they're the main resource areas, and we've had, I think, some really good outcomes, particularly in that southern zone very recently. We just put an announcement out last week. We're more than halfway through that current resource drilling. We've got over 18,000 metres on the ground already, and we're pushing ahead with the view that we'll do that resource upgrade as early as we can in April. And that's going to really inform the work we've done up to date, and also the feasibility studies. We've been working with GR Engineering and ALS on the metallurgy. That's very advanced now. We're seeing, I think, a lot of good things coming out of that. That's moving, I guess, in the right direction in terms of what we see in economics, and that information, as it comes to hand, we'll put into the market as to create, I guess, a better awareness of the project. The pre-feasibility studies are scheduled to be complete by the end of June. It's a fairly aggressive timeline, but we've done a lot of our homework in the last 6 months or so. So we've run a lot of pit optimizations and really focused on the open pit component, but there is also a small underground potential there as well. So just stepping back and just really going through what we have here as a project. The Katanning project, we're broken down into 3 main zones. The central zone is the core of the project. It sits there with the bulk of the resources, about over 1.4 million ounces located there. A smaller component there sitting at an area called Dingo in the southern part of the project, and that's an area that's really a lot of active exploration. We see a lot of potential upside, and I'll explain why we think that as well. And there's the underground potential. Most of the drilling in this project has been focused in the top 300 metres, so we haven't looked deep, but we do have grade to support an underground. So just quickly going through that long section there, you can see this is a regional long section, so it really cuts through the time strike length of this project down to about the Dingo area, starting from here. You can see there's a few gaps. One of those biggest gaps is the rifle range area, and that's an area that's required a bit of permitting, but we're working on in and around that area at the moment. The Dingo resource, it's 147,000 ounces. It's open to the south, and we've identified mineralisation over a further 900 metres of strike length, and that seems to be open and continuing. We've got anomalism all the way down this entire 8 kilometres of strike length in the southern zone. There's been a lot of previous air core drilling, so I think in essence, we're really looking for a repeat of that central zone. And we say that with a bit of confidence because it's a double plunging system because it's a broad fold. So that Jinka's central zone area plunges to the north. As we step through the rifle range, it flattens off and plunges to the south. So there is a potential that we'll see another 1.5 million ounces to the south. And that's what we're really going there to find. You can see here, this is a zoom in of this Jinka's area. And I'll come back to this a little bit later, but you can see there's a lot of very high grades in that. And they're really focused in these high grade shoots. And there's 2 of them here. We have 3 stacked loads, but 2 very high grade shoots. And these are very responsive to downhole EM. So we've been using those to target those directly. So just looking at this, this main resource area, the Jinka's area, which is just here in cross section, you can see these high grade shoots are actually the result of folding of the ore body. It's a very high grade metamorphic system. It's done a couple of things. It's created these structures that localize the gold. It's also liberated the gold, and what we see is some very, very coarse gold here. There's a very high gravity component when we're looking at it in terms of metallurgy. It's also created these high grade shoots that we target using that downhole EM. There's also there's 3 stacked loads with these high grade shoots sitting within those. So in a mining sense, we see, I guess, it's a quite large open pit potential opening up around that with these very high grade components sitting within those. This is a zoom in of that long section view that I showed previously. And the reason why I've shown it again is just to really highlight some of the gaps in here, which we're coming back to drill, like this area in here, which is quite under drilled, but these high grade shoots essentially connect right through and also continue on to the north. And part of the exploration we're doing at the moment is targeting that northern down plunge component, which we would consider as an underground target. But you can see by some of these grades here and some of those thicknesses that would support quite a good and profitable underground alongside a very large open pit operation. I sort of stole my thunder a bit here in terms of talking about that underground, but stepping to the north, this is the area here that we're looking at. This resource portion here is actually a parallel lode. And what we're not seeing here, because of lack of drilling, is this area here being followed up. So that's something we're really coming back to, because all the work we've done today has been really focused in this top open pit pittable portion of that sort of top 250 odd meters. Now we're looking more down plunge, down dip, and trying to fill that out as well, because we think there's some easy low-hanging fruit there. Again, looking towards that southern zone, and you can see here, this is an EM response from a VTEM survey that was flown a few years ago. And you can see along within that Jinka's area, that high-grade shoot, which is here, represents quite a prominent EM high. It's quite close to surface there. We see some EM trends within the rifle range area, which is located about here, with coincident golden soils anomalism. So we're looking at that as having potential to extend this resource. Really, this area has been hampered by access. It's a remnant woodland, but we do have permitting to access that. We conducted a drill campaign in May last year, and we got some clear extensions of the dingo system. But what we're now looking for is extensions of that parallel lode that forms the Jinkas and White Dam lodes. We see the highest grades in that part of the system, and we're stepping out into that as well. We've got a much better handle of the geology, particularly in the southern zone now. We've built up a very good stratigraphy, and we're using that to move across the project very systematically. This is looking in a plan view. This is the rifle range we're just talking about. You can see these trends. These are shown at 0.1 gold anomalism. So these are based on real data, based on air core drilling. And you can see the main dingo trend, which is the westernmost, is actually an extension of what we see further north at Jackson. In parallel to that, there's a number of other lodes we think are probably these high grade White Dam and Jinkers lodes, those ones I was showing you in long section just before. With our new drilling, we've extended this Dingo resource. It's 147,000 ounces at the moment. We think it could be a lot larger. We've had some really excellent intercepts within that, quite shallow, high grade, good widths. We've extended it to the south. We're looking to pick up this high grade shoot here. We haven't intersected it there, but we've got drilling underway in this area here that we think will very likely target that and add more grade and thickness to that resource area. So that's talking to the main Tanning project. Now stepping out, we've got a number of parallel trends. To the north, I mentioned this northern zone, we've got a small resource area called Data Time. Some great results out of that. We've already commenced an air core program, really filling out and following up some of these anomalies such as Burong, where we also got some very high grade intercepts. That trend there is about 10 kilometers long. It is interesting, it's a nor-northeast trend opposed to this nor-northwest trend. We think there's a lot in that, and we're using that as part of our exploration across the region. There's two other trends that we've identified within, I think, an easy trucking distance of the main Tanning project. These are not currently in resource. They're discoveries by Dominion in the 90s, and I think further work here will deliver resource in the near term. And just really stepping out to that broader view, this is a gravity image. There's a major structure sitting on there, and there's a recent GSWA volume on the southwest Yilgarn. It's identified that area as we've always known as a major crustal feature. We can see there the gravity high, which marks out the relatively layered mafic intrusive complex. We've intersected up to 1.5% copper, 12 grams silver in this area. We're following these up with a regional campaign, as well as these areas up Duggan, Marallup Soak and Tamakuring in the north here. So there's a lot of potential in the region, not just for gold, but also for copper and PGEs. So thanks for listening. Just to recap, large resource base. We're taking that through feasibility studies at the moment. We're also supporting it with a large drill campaign. Expect to see a resource update in April and then a maiden ore reserve in June. And I think we're one of the best value gold projects on the ASX. So thank you.
Alicanto is rapidly approaching their maiden resource at the historic Sala Silver Zinc project, I beg your pardon, Silver Zinc Lead project in the Bergslagen region in Sweden. Alicanto Minerals MD is Peter George, and he joins us now with an update. Morning, Peter.
Morning, and thanks everybody for coming this morning and everyone tuning in online. I really want to tell you a story about a project so old that it predates a lot of Australian European history by several hundred years. But the project that was coveted by numerous generations of Swedish kings and queens and was referred to as part of the Swedish treasury for the best part of 400 years. The Sala Silver Zinc Lead mine produced over 200 million ounces of silver out of 5 million tonnes mined and only down to a depth of 290 metres. And it has all but been forgotten about for the best part of the last 100 years. But don't let the age of it fool you into thinking that, the Viking treasure trove has been exhausted. We picked up the Sala project only 1 year ago, believe it or not, and what we've uncovered is nothing short of amazing in such a short period of time. But firstly, just draw your attention to the disclaimer, especially in reference to forward-looking statements. You can read that on our website. Look, if you do nothing else out of this conference, do yourself a favour and take a closer look at Alicanto. Our market cap is the same today as what it was when we pegged Sala only 12 months ago. We have over $7 million in the bank after a successful capital raise late last year and the sale of our Guyana assets. We have a very stable top 20 that owns over 50% of the company. We already have multiple US funds on our register that can see our potential. We have 3 drill rigs spinning, and we have a maiden resource just around the corner. Our board and management speaks for itself. Over 150 years combined experience in both greenfields and brownfields exploration, and mine development projects with over 10 combined exploration discoveries, with 6 in Sweden. Mining engineers stuff up good ore bodies, apparently, or versions of the same theme I've heard over more than a few times over my career. I think now that I'm coming towards the latter part of my career, I can quite happily say that the opposite is now proving to be true. I assume I at least have the attention of the geologists in the room. But I'll take a bit of a step back in time to put things in perspective for you. So my journey in Sweden started when I was a graduate mining engineer back in the mid-90s, and I was really fortunate to get a gig with Boliden at the time while I was up in the Northern University Exchange from the School of Mines in Kalgoorlie. 45 degrees when I left Kalgoorlie on Boxing Day 95, and when I arrived in Luleå, it was minus 35. 21 years old with long dark hair, bloody good looking fella, and life was great. Lots of snow, lots of snowboarding, and lots of really beautiful mines to cut my teeth on. Not bad going from mining engineer born and bred in the goldfields of Western Australia. Alicanto's journey into Sweden itself only started in 2019 after myself, Eric Lindstrom, our chief geologist, joined the team and took things in a direction. Our main focus when we started in Sweden in 19 was on the Greater Falun project, a project with a seriously impressive pedigree, having produced 28 million tonnes over the best part of 700 years, with average grades of 4 grams per tonne gold, 4% copper, 35 grams per tonne silver, 5% zinc and 2% lead. We always knew that Falun was a greenfields play back in a brownfields region, but we've had some fantastic success in redefining the geology, had some great hits in our drilling, but not yet found the widths we need to produce a resource. But whilst working through the process at Falun, I came across the opportunity at Sala towards the end of 2020. Again, another mine that isn't quite as old as Falun, but we started back in the 1500s, which again is older than anything we have in Australia by a long time. The Sala mine was seriously impressive. It produced over 200 million ounces of silver out of 5 million tonnes mined, for an average grade of 1,244 grams per tonne. It was closed in the early 1900s, and they only got down to 290 metre level. I've known about the Sala mine for over 25 years, and I actually went down it with my father in 1996, an very important part of Swedish mining history. But even 25 years ago, I couldn't have imagined that this old mine, that had been mostly mined with fire and water, would still hold more secrets. So we pegged Sala in early 2021. Yes, believe it or not, but it only cost us the pegging fees. It was sitting there forgotten about, like it has for most of the last 100 years. Again, hard to believe when you hear of the stories of old mines in Australia that have been brought back to life. And we got to work. Eric did what he does best and applied his well-proven methods for sniffing out high-value ore bodies. He's actually found 6 of them already within his career within the region. And we started to dig into the archives. It is here that I need to give you a bit of a history lesson about the Swedish mining industry. Believe it or not, but Sweden has been only open for foreign investment in exploration mining projects since 1992. On top of that, any exploration data gleaned by the big boys, being Boliden, LKAB and Lundin, prior to that period, does not legally need to be provided back to the government. So basically everything prior to 1992 sits within Geo's stashes. Little wonder that the mining landscape is still massively dominated by these big 3, but we're looking to change that. Our focus in Sweden has been within the Bergslagen district of Sweden, an area famous for being one of the most mineralised places on earth. And we're only 100 or so kilometres away from Stockholm. It's also home to a number of the world's top polymetallic projects. And due to a lack of foreign investment and domination by the big players in Sweden, we believe 2 of these projects have fallen a long way behind. We're on the cusp of pushing Sala up that curve. So as I said, we got to work on the geology and trawling through the archives. The geology was instantly interesting, and we put in a small drilling campaign in May last year where we wanted to test a few ideas. The archive trawling was more difficult for the reasons stated before, but we started to find clues here and there that there was a significant trove of Viking data treasure that sat in a few companies' hands and the government. But for various reasons, they either didn't know what they had or it was not a priority for them. I suspect it was a bit of both. So after many phone calls and letters, we had a big breakthrough And the Swedish Geological Society told us that they had some information in a hidden archive and that they were going to release it to us. So bingo, we got a database of over 15,000 metres of drilling with all sorts of treasure in it, none of which had been released to the public before. And it isn't every day that you're given for free an 87-metre intersection at 5.3% zinc, 40 grams per tonne silver, or hits of over 6,812 grams per tonne silver and 41% zinc amongst a trove of other intersections that we released last year. This data gave us a massive head start on our drilling, and our understanding of the geology began to go exponential, keeping in mind that this is only 6 months ago. The majority of the historical data is with an area called the Prince Lode, which sits next door to the old Sala mine. But there was nearly enough drilling there that once we started to model it up, we realised that there was a reasonable amount of our own drilling. On top of that, we could quite quickly come up with our maiden resource at Sala, completely outside of the old workings. As we progressed with our drilling and our analysis of historical data, we quickly came to the realisation that we were potentially looking at the beginnings of a world-class system here with mineralisation that stretches over 3 kilometres from north to south and 1.5 kilometres from east to west, with both wide and high-grade intercepts and significant mineralisation in every hole that we have drilled. The trick is now to stitch these intersections together. From a geological perspective, things have really started to heat up. We've worked out that there are at least 3 different styles of mineralisation now present at Sala. We have the strata-bound sphalerite dominant zinc, lead, silver mineralisation, which is around the Prince. So again, that has never been mined. We also have the classic Sala galena silver dominated mineralisation, which is strongly structurally controlled and cross-cuts the strata-bound type. Again, that's where Sala exists, and we strongly believe that it's open to at both ends and at depth, and it has a potential for repeats. We also have intrusion proximal massive pyroxene with strong sphalerite mineralisation. We've just recently released the glass workings, where we've had over 10.3% zinc and 118 grams per tonne silver. And we've also most recently discovered that there's also copper and gold mineralisation floating around in the system, which we've yet to investigate properly. So armed with this information, we set ourselves the ambitious target of putting out our maiden resource at Sala in the first quarter of this year. Given we're now halfway through the quarter, I have to admit that we're possibly going to miss this target by a small margin, not because of a lack of information, but we have had the nice to have problem of hitting significant mineralisation in every hole that we've drilled so far. And we keep finding historical information to add into our database. So again, I'll repeat, if you do nothing else out of this conference, do yourself a favour and take a closer look at Alicanto. Our market cap is the same today as when we pegged it 12 months ago. We have over $7 million in the bank, so we're well funded for the whole year. We have a very stable top 20, controls over 50% of the company, with the US funds jumping on board in our last capital raise in November. The team we've done it before. You can see there's a definite Bellevue flavour to our board. Our exploration team in Sweden is second to none. Eric is one of the best geologists I've ever come across. I've known him for 25 years. We've got 3 drill rigs spinning. So a lot of information flow. We have our maiden resource just around the corner. Yeah, so if you want any more information, you're more than welcome to come over to my booth over in there in the back corner. And hope you have a nice day.
Prodigy Gold's exploration manager, Edward Keys, has over 14 years of diverse international experience across multiple commodities within mining and exploration companies in various aspects of mine geology, exploration, project management, and strategic leadership. Ed joined Prodigy over 2 years ago, and he joins us this morning with the Prodigy story. Welcome, Edward.
Thanks, Jerry. Appreciate that. Thanks, everybody, for coming along, and thanks for the sponsors and all the workers that have made this happen. Prodigy story, here we go. We're continuing our systematic exploration in the Tanami as one of the leading explorers up there. I probably won't get into too much of this information here, but feel free to read it later. Little corporate snapshot. Our board of directors are well experienced in taking us forward on our our scoping study to advance our projects and our resources, as well as our exploration continuing. We've got very strong joint venture partners, namely Newmont and IGO, and IGO backs that up by owning a significant portion of our shareholding structure at 8.5% there. We're funded to take us through our first round of exploration this year, as well as progressing our concept study at one of our major resources. So a couple of highlights and a bit of a structure to this presentation today. We've got a very enviable greenfields and brownfields portfolio in the Tanami, and a leading explorer as far as the real estate holding we've got there, backed up by our joint ventures and the money that they're putting forward to the projects that we're advancing. As you can see, we've got a total inventory of over 1 million ounces of gold there. And that's all on our own, our 100% ground for Prodigy. This is all along strike from a pretty world-class mine. I'm sure everybody's aware of the Cali mine with Newmont with 14 million ounces, and it's significantly underexplored in the Tanami region. There hasn't been enough million-ounce deposits found in a region that supports a 14 million ounce resource. So they're there. It's known as Elephant Country, and it's our job to systematically explore that while developing our resources, continuing with our major joint venture partners, IGO and Newmont. So we're looking forward to continued success, and I'll take you through the presentation here. Just a little bit of a geographical framework there. You can see IGO, major joint venture in the Lake Mackay region down to the south in red, and then Newmont, our joint ventures in green in the central areas there. So the Monza agreement, we just had our first joint venture meeting in late December with a significant amount of money that they're going to be putting into the exploration there. So I feel the $6 million that Newmont's going to contribute around the Cali deposit on our tenements, as well as the Oberon deposit, is a reasonable amount to actually test for the gold that's already showing up in the drill holes out there. Similarly, with the Tobruk joint venture agreement, $12 million in-ground spend with a bunch of cash is a significant amount of money to help us effectively explore that. And not only that, but have the brains and the prowess of the experience of these joint venture partners to help us take that through. Just as a little aside, all of this tenement here, their package, it's about half the size of the Netherlands, and it's a significant area, and having as many brains as we can and as many dollars as we can to systematically explore this is beneficial. Just going through a couple of the exploration highlights from this year. Yes, a good one there is we're advancing our Buccaneer resource, which is 585,000 ounces. We sent down a couple of metallurgical holes and geotechnical holes and received anticipated results. 16 meters at nearly 6 grams per ton is what we anticipated, and that's going along to metallurgical analysis as part of our scoping study right now. So we did test around 10 of our 15 fully permitted targets last year with significant mineralization in each one of those. So that really allows us to funnel down the important targets that we can continue to advance this year in our exploration and resource development. Now that follows on from a successful concept study that was independently reviewed, allowing us to continue with some comminution test work at our Buccaneer deposit, and again that's 1,000 ounces. So the test work that we got done were the compressive strength, UCS, CWI, and abrasive index, which returned favorable results and allowed us to take that independently reviewed concept study and move it forward to our scoping study already in progress. All right, just another little map there describing this Buccaneer resource. That's a well-developed gold project that's had a little bit of dust on its shoulder for the last few years, and we're now actively taking it up towards pre-feasibility and hopefully getting the inferred resources up to indicated status as soon as we can. Now, a very promising project because of its fully permitted nature on a granted mineral lease, exploration and mining agreements with the traditional owners, as well as the flora and fauna baseline surveys already been completed. So we've got a good infrastructure up there. We've got a haul road, we've got a landing strip, and a decent camp that allows us to survive up in the Tanami Desert. Now, obviously, it's right off the Tanami Road, which provides linkage into Western Australia as well as down to Alice Springs, and along the track from the Cali Gold Mine, where obviously a significant amount of investment has gone into the recent pipelines. So all those check marks are in place, and the scoping study is in progress. So we're going to throw some check marks into that this year and potentially look at the upside potential. So we're looking towards a heap leach concept as this scoping study progresses. Now, obviously, that's a low capital expenditure and operating expenditure in the heap leach scenario. We'll investigate the CIL comparison and see what turns out to be the most effective and well, cost-effective technique to extract this resource as we progress into pre-feasibility land. So as I say, the favorable metallurgical results this year have allowed us to continue with metallurgical testing, which our holes are now being crushed and looked at for the crushability and what size is available to return the most effective amount of gold. So this work is in progress, and we hope to get preliminary results on that soon, maybe May, June, as we continue on that scoping study. A little bit of upside potential here that's been advanced over the last year and hasn't received the amount of attention that it necessarily should for a 585,000 ounce gold deposit. So the Monzo granite is where the resource is located in. The vast majority of the drilling is down south, and that's a concept pit design that we've got there. You can see the strike length of the Monzo granite of this structurally controlled gold resource is significantly long, of 2 kilometers, and hasn't been effectively drill tested for the majority of it. Now, obviously, with our 300 plus RC and diamond holes being limited in the area of the density of the resource, with significant results in most of the other holes advancing north, this allows for potential of growth of the ounces to the north with the structural control, as well as with recent air core drilling that we did this year down to the south. Actually, in the sediments down to the south, we're receiving significant mineralization in the supergene. So it's not necessarily related exclusive to the Monzo granite, but we do have open areas to look for additional oxide gold, which is definitely beneficial in a heap leach scenario. Now, obviously, it's still open at depth, open to the north, open to the south. And you know what we're going to be doing as an exploration company is trying to add ounces as we continue on with the scoping study here. Moving on to more of a less developed gold project, but very interesting for us, our Trigg Gold system. Now, this has been a very important exploration target for our company for many years, but unfortunately permitting hasn't allowed us to get on ground until last year. So what we did is we investigated the database, found a whole bunch of holes in it, and realized, missing data, I should say, realized that we had to release the results and reinterpret the mineralized model. So we now have a stacked vein mineralized model that was drill tested this year with a diamond hole that corroborated our mineralization model. So this stacked vein model terminates on the Supplejack shear zone, which is host to over 1.5 million ounces of gold, right from Northern Star's ground rush at 1 million ounces through our Hyperion 100% Prodigy, 300,000 ounces, up to Crusade up top. So we're looking at the Tregony area here, specifically for exploration potential with 9 kilometers of untested ground. So I was out there, had a pretty good look and map and realized that this is potentially a geochemically blind target, which is why nobody sunk a drill hole into there. We've got flat-lying, younger sedimentary rock that's silicified, that's on top of the vertically dipping, highly prospective Tanami group. So I'd say there's probably about 60 square kilometers without a hole on it on a mineralized trend with 1.5 million ounces. And I'm really excited to sink a couple RC holes, get through that cap, and see if we can't find a sniff of a 1 million ounce resource underneath. So this is one of our focuses on for this year. Now, obviously, our joint ventures are very important to us. IGO specifically with our availability to get into that base metal expertise and targeting potential. With the discovery of our Freaker base metal deposit discovery last year with over 4.5 meters of over 3% copper with a bit of gold and silver in there too. Oh, that's just down there. We're going to be following that up this year, so it's a no-brainer to follow up 3% copper, and especially with the brains and the dollars of IGO to help us out along the way. There's some gold targets there too. This is the Freaker discovery that I was talking about. It doesn't take much more than a simple gold geologist like myself to understand that that looks pretty, and that's what we're looking for this year when we drill out the remainder of this target. So the downhole EM on the discovery holes last year provide insight that we've got conductive metals that are open at depth and open along strike, which is exactly where we plan to drill, obviously. So we're going to follow our sniffing device of the downhole EM and help us get some of this shiny rock out of the ground again this year. Our Newmont joint venture, as I've harped on a little bit more, is incredibly important to us, and with the advent and inclusion of the Monza JV agreement. You can see on the right here, including Tobruk and Monza, we've got a significant amount of cash that's coming into this ground. So, and it's, we've got a 14 million ounce deposit there and a few more 100,000 ounces over at Oberon. The infrastructure is there, the ground is there, the brains are there, and now the money's there. So we're really excited about seeing what Newmont can assist with the exploration potential of this ground. So just a bit of a focus on what we're doing this year. Continuing the scoping, scoping study at Buccaneer is a real good time to do that. Gold price is high. We've got an excellent geological team and a very experienced field team that's good into the remote exploration areas that we have. So we're continuing the scoping study. We're getting our guys back out on the ground, and we're going to move forward with our resource extensions. Drilling undercover on these targets that are fully permitted and permission now is also very exciting, and looking forward to advancing our JV understanding on the rest of our joint venture ground. I think that's all. Thanks for listening, guys.
Back again at RIU in 2022, Musgrave Minerals Managing Director Rob Waugh is a passionate 30-year geologist with background forged through 19 years at WMC and BHP, a very successful exploration geologist with nickel, copper, uranium, and gold discoveries all on the resume. His current gold success at Q is another tick. Rob joins us to tell us more. Welcome back, Rob.
Thanks, Jerry. I'll probably write that myself, but well done. Just like to thank RIU. Great conference again, difficult circumstances, and thanks to the team for putting it on, and pleasure to speak here again. Our Q Gold project. Just like you to take you through the disclaimer. Everything's on the website. Please read it at your pleasure. Objectives for the year. We want to systematically grow our resource base. The intent for the company is to build the resource base over 1 million ounces. There'll probably be a number of iterations in the resource to get to that point, but that's the objective. We've got a joint venture with Evolution, been a great partner for us. They're exploring the lake. We continue with our feasibility level studies over our existing deposits, and they will continue in time. So new deposits coming into the portfolio as we build our resource, and we continue PFS level studies on them as well. We really want to define a very clear path to first gold production. That's our ultimate goal. We're in a pretty strong cash position, 17.5 million end of December. We're spending about $1 million a month at the moment, multiple rigs on site. Liquidity dropped off a little bit over the last 3 months with the volatility in the gold space, but it's still pretty good. And you can see our major shareholder base there as well. We've had a strong, very stable board. We've recently added Brett to the board, engineering experience, a long history in engineering, in mining, in Western Australia, and more broadly. It's great to have Brett in there. You can see the location of the project too, up the Great Northern Highway on the road from the Pilbara back to Perth. The mainstay of our project is Cracker Bay and Lena. There's an existing resource base around that of 660,000 ounces made up of a number of deposits. Very high grade at Cracker Bay, very close to surface. Key intercepts 12 months ago of 14 metres, 190 grams, only 4 metres below surface. So we're covered by a very thin hard pan layer, which disguised these deposits and left them in the ground. Initial mining in this district was 1895, so one of the very first gold fields in Western Australia. But there's still things to find, and that's really important to note. One of the key influences on what we're doing is integrating our data sets. We've got a great team in place. There are a number of our people here, geotechnical people here on the booth today. Jono's here, Marsha's here, Kelvin's here. We can all take you through some geotechnical questions if you have them. We integrate our data. We're very careful about integrating gravity, as you see on this image, with magnetics, other geophysical techniques, with IP. Geology is important, and then structure. And interpreting that has really led us to these key discoveries. Multiple shear zones we're seeing, they're all running parallel, major flexions, and then focusing on breaks within that. One of the newer discoveries, White Heat and Mosaic, only about 300 metres south of Breaker Day, then hits beneath about 3 to 4 metres of hard pan cover. You can see a long section there of White Heat here, a little bit of leach on the surface, and then straight into high-grade mineralisation. Breaker Day sitting up here, multiple back lodes, then White Heat here, and the new Mosaic lode is running at a spike of about 0.0. We've sectioned it here. First holes in that, fantastic results. One of the best results of last year, are on the 100% Musgrave ground. And we're in a strong gold price environment. A little bit of sentiment has come out of gold, but the overall Aussie gold price has been fantastic, and long may it continue. A key component of what we're doing is a joint venture with Evolution. The 100% ground is in green, Musgrave's 100% ground. The JV area is between that. We can see a salt pan running through most of that area. So it's a covered area. We're looking at between sort of 10 metres and on the edges of the lake, and it extends down to about 80 metres of cover. A number of key points. We've made some significant discoveries at West Island and Lake Austin. Evolution have just taken over management of this JV on the 1st of January this year. So they're managing it going forward, and that's been good. It shows a commitment to the tenements, to the project, to the joint venture. They've increased the budget for the next 6 months as well, and it frees up our people. Our people can come back and work on the 100% Musgrave ground in a tight resource people market. That's important. So they've spent about $9 million, halfway through their $18 million spend at the moment. You can see some of the key results there. One of the key prospects, West Island, it's a dolerite-hosted opportunity. We're in this location up in here. So we've got about 1.6 kilometres of strike of mineralisation in the regolith. In the cross-section, you can see the gold blanket that we're getting beneath this yellow cover sequence. This is in the clay zone, up to sort of 50, 60 metres at a gram and a half before we get into the higher grade fresh rock beneath that. And we think we can see evidence for multiple subvertical lodes like this, where you're getting intersections of 4 metres at 40 and 3 at 10 that are high angle cross-cutting this dolerite unit. So we expect multiple lodes to be present, and we're drilling at the moment. Evolution are controlling that drilling, looking for continuity of these lodes. We think this dolerite unit is quite extensive. It extends from the West Island area in here, south through the Lake Austin North prospect, where we're getting some good results, back into 100% Musgrave ground. We're drilling this component of that dolerite at the moment. There's 4 kilometres of strike. It's about a 14,000 metre air core program. That program finished yesterday. We're pending assays for those drill holes. We're excited about that opportunity. And this brings a pipeline of opportunities through the company as we develop existing prospects and resources. We'll continue to add at the front end. We're doing a lot of work at the moment, multiple rigs out on site. A lot of that is focused on resource drilling, but also on extension. Big Sky and White Heat Mosaic are some of the key prospects we'll add to the resource base in early June this year. We've got other exciting targets that are in the portfolio that are coming through as well, with Amarillo and new regional targets from that air core program we've just completed. We're doing extensional resource and resource conversion drilling at Break of Day and Lena as well, looking at the deep component of that. That's from 200 metres plus down to about 450. We want to convert some of that inferred to indicated as well. We have the joint venture with Evolution, as I mentioned. There's a diamond rig on that at the moment as well. Looking forward to additional air core drilling in the coming 3 or 4 months. And as I mentioned, PFS level studies happening. A key component of what we're doing is sustainability. We're involving the local community from directly working relationships to indirect. We're involved in education, sponsorships. We have good relationships with our Indigenous stakeholders. Our people are really important to us in the current environment with COVID as well, and keeping them safe and engaged. And we've had a pretty good wet season over the last season, so that's really helped with our rehab and environmental aspects. And really for us going forward, we're at the front end of this process. So in new operations, we can really get in the front end and really reduce emissions as we progress towards development and look at alternative power models. Something to keep in mind for us, a good existing resource base, but we have really key components of what we're doing. We've got high grade, we're near surface, we're getting good recoveries, we're in an area with great infrastructure, and location, and the exploration upside we think is fantastic. So we're continuing to grow the resource. We're continuing to make new discoveries. We've got multiple drill rigs out on site. We've got a lot of assays still pending as well. We're well funded. It's a really strong gold price environment we're in. We're very optimistic for the year ahead and looking forward to really progressing the company and getting this closer towards development. So I think it holds us in good stead, Jerry, and we're excited. We're in the booth. Please come have a chat. We're happy to talk.
Good stuff. Thank you, Rob. Chalice's Greenfield Neuemer Platinum Group elements, copper and nickel alloy discovery, is one of the largest in recent history, and the company is rapidly advancing the new resource reported in late 2021. Chalice Mining MD and CEO is Alex Dorsch, and he joins us now with the Chalice story. Welcome along, Alex.
Thanks very much, Jerry. Good morning, everyone. Great to be presenting at this great conference again this year. Obviously, we were very fortunate to share the honours for the Craig Oliver Award last year. And we've made some tremendous strides forward on our key asset, Neuemer. So without further ado, let me take you through the recent update. So the normal forward-looking statements, disclosures, these are available to read either on our website, or if you'd like a hard copy, please come by our booth and read these in your own time. So Chalice, I think everyone appreciates the rapid growth that Chalice has had over the last 2 years on the back of a world-class discovery. Our Neuemer project is continuing to shoot up the leaderboard in terms of its global significance. It's a world-class polymetallic project in WA, a tier 1 scale, pit-constrained sulfide resource. As Jerry said, PGEs, nickel, copper, cobalt, little bit of gold there as well. And it equates to 330 million tonnes in pit at almost 0.6% nickel equivalent, or 1.6 grams per tonne palladium equivalent. So 10 million ounces of contained precious metals and around about 900,000 tonnes of contained base metals. It's a tremendous set of numbers that obviously we're very, very proud of. What makes it particularly valuable and particularly unique is that there's just no discoveries of this scale being made anywhere on the planet really at the moment, and that's why this captures so much attention. You have to look back sort of 20 years plus to see a discovery that really approaches the magnitude of this one. You go back to Western Mining's discovery of West Musgrave out in eastern WA, and then it was a long time between drinks really before going back to the one before that. So it's a true global scale and very much relevant discovery for our time. And there's a lot of work yet to be done here with the drill bit to fully understand the limits of this resource. So we've drilled about 7% of the strike length of the geological feature that hosts this mineralization. So you get a sense there that there is immense exploration upside. And why is it so relevant? I guess as well as that, as we all appreciate, the critical minerals requirement for a decarbonised world is substantial. So we need many, many more of these size discoveries to satisfy the demand from things like electric vehicles, renewables, things like hydrogen. These are very, very relevant metals for all those technologies, and we're better to get them out of than just outside of Perth here in WA. So Chalice is a well-funded, high-performing team. We've proven time and time again that not only can we find things, but we define mines that end up being commercially successful, and we also return capital to our shareholders. We look after our shareholders. Obviously, I'm one, and that's part of our DNA. It's not just being technically sound and technically at the top of our game. It's looking after our shareholders commercially as well. So we're well funded. We finished last year with about 65 million in cash plus about 9 million in liquid investments. And our share price performance has been exceptional, as most people would appreciate, up 50-fold since the discovery in March of 2020. So this is a very enjoyable chart to look at for the original holders of Chalice, starting with our discovery hole back in March of 2020, and then subsequent inclusion into ASX 300, ASX 200. We're sitting at now around about 2.8 billion Australian dollars, and we're really sort of just getting going on the next phase of growth, our target immediately north of the resource there at Hartog. So, you know, Neuemer is a province-defining discovery as well. The other thing that makes this so unique is not just shallow, it's not just got a high-grade core, it's not just in Western Australia, it's really a totally greenfield discovery. So all the surrounding areas, this new province is wide open for more discovery, and luckily we're basically in command of the vast majority of it. So the geological feature there, the Neuemer complex, you can see extends over 26 kilometres. That is a substantial amount of exploration work ahead of us just there. You can see where the deposit is there, Gonville at the southern end there. And that deposit is 70 kilometres away from the CBD of Perth, around about 100 kilometres from where we are today. And that world-class resource was defined with 520 drill holes. And the drill holes that were drilled and where the cutoff was made was basically in the middle of 2021. So we've drilled something like 300 more drill holes now at Gonville that will be part of the resource update. So we haven't by any means closed off the Gonville discovery to any degree. So we are, you know, that resource covers 2 kilometres of strike length. We're currently just started really testing a further 10 kilometres of strike length. But while we do that, obviously all our study team, all our engineers are really rapidly trying to move Gonville towards a mining development. And that is certainly helped by the fact that we've got world-class infrastructure, as you appreciate, a city of circa 2 million people, fantastic workforce, really there waiting to be deployed just outside the northern suburbs of Perth. So these metals I mentioned, you know, platinum, palladium, I think are two particular that are doing a lot of heavy lifting against climate change. At the moment, they probably don't get the credit they deserve, but they basically strip nitrous oxides out of exhaust streams. And those are very, very potent greenhouse gases, much more potent than things like methane and CO2. So they are doing the heavy lifting. They are the green metals at the moment, you know, compared to nickel, copper, cobalt. These are the critical metals today. In future, they're likely to play a very important role in hydrogen. So things like fuel cells, hydrogen transportation through means like ammonia. These are going to be the critical metals to enable those technologies. But also nickel obviously playing a big role there as well. Nickel cobalt goes without saying, you know, electric vehicles, you know, very much dependent on these two metals, and copper is basically the enabler of everything to do with electrification. So we've got a tier 1 scale peak constrained resource. As I said, that this is a view sort of looking to the northeast over the conceptual resource pit. It's got high grade internal core to the resource. And you can see all the open arrows there, basically open in most directions still. And still we have 5 rigs here. Two rigs have just moved, you know, across into the state forest area to the north. But you can see that there's still a lot of drilling to be done here at Gonville. So the contained metal numbers, again, on the right-hand side there, about 50% of the resources in the indicated category. We expect to upgrade that significantly by the next resource update, which is we're aiming to put out in May. And actually, a lot of those holes are really already drilled. We're just waiting for a number of assays. And I guess what makes this such an attractive proposition is that we have high-grade sulfide material that is starting at a depth of about 30 metres below surface. So if you appreciate how rare it is to get high-grade mineralisation so shallow, usually you are chasing depths of 500, 1,000, 1,500 metres deep to get this sort of material in the big production centres of Russia, South Africa. So this is very, very unusual for it to be almost sticking out of the ground. So within the 330 million tonne resource number, we have approximately a quarter of those tonnes have almost double the grade. So that really gives you a nice sweet spot to concentrate on in the early years of operations and maximise the profitability through that payback period. And you can see that the high grade blocks there, they hang together nicely as well. It's not like you've just sort of scattered everywhere throughout the deposit. Looking at the resource here, you can see there's already some blocks, there's already some mineralisation well outside the limits of the pit shell. So none of those blocks are included in that 330 million tonne number. And you can see that the northern end on the left-hand side there, the pit is artificially shallow, really just because there's a lack of drilling. So you can see that the growth potential is really in that, deepening the pit dimension there at the northern end, and then potentially going into the underground category. You can see there that everything is looking to have a sort of northwesterly or plunge towards the bottom left-hand side of the page there. So that'll be the focus really for, deeper drilling in that underground category. And as you can see at the bottom of the page, there's already evidence there of high-grade mineralisation down at 850 metres deep. And we know there that the intrusion is still about 550 metres thick at that point. So there is a huge amount of drilling to be done, chasing further down that dip towards the bottom left-hand side of the page. But what is everyone talking about at the moment? It goes without saying that everyone's very interested in what we're doing at Hartog. We got approval from the state government to start drilling late last year. We've got 2 rigs now operating at Hartog. You can see there where the resource is at the bottom left-hand side of the page. This is what exploration is all about. This is the most exciting drill program probably anywhere on the planet right now. And you can see why that the EM response that at Hartog is very, very similar to what we've seen at Gonville, and that's delivered a world-class resource that's very close to surface. So we've got coincident ground EM plates as well as nickel copper soil anomalies associated with those plates. So obviously it goes without saying it's a very, very interesting and very exciting drill program that's underway at the moment. But that's certainly not the end of it. You can see Baudin, Jans, Torres, some 15 plus kilometres away from our resource. Those are very interesting targets as well that we're sort of working our way from the northern end down with air core drilling at the moment. So we're waiting on a bunch of assays at the moment for Torres, and the air core rig is currently operating at the Jans target there. We already have, I guess, a bit of an insight as to what Hartog may be through drilling a little bit of an accidental discovery on farmland made late last year. We put some RC holes there, as you can see there on the left-hand side, northwest of Gonville. We extended a few RC lines really to see what happens to Gonville as you go sort of northwest. And we hit a new intrusive unit that was about 70 metres above Gonville, about 30 metres wide. And sure enough, there's the albeit narrow high-grade nickel copper PGEs in that new ultramafic intrusive unit. So that little unit there, you can see trends quite nicely up into the forest. And obviously that's why, again, that is such an exciting target to drill. You can see how extensive the EM response is there in that northern area. So I guess there's a de-risking that's been done there by drilling those holes and finding that separate unit. And obviously, finding it is one thing. Getting it out of the ground is arguably just as big a challenge. So we have years worth of test work to be done really to understand fully our mineralogy and how these metals will be extracted. Safe to say that the high-grade material, the high-grade sulfide material has been the focus of our initial work, and we've had very positive results. We've basically shown that we can produce 2 separate concentrates, a copper precious metals concentrate as well as a nickel cobalt concentrate. We've got a tightened range of expected recoveries now up on the right-hand side of that page. We believe those concentrates will be very attractive to a whole range of customers, particularly the way the nickel market is at the moment. Everyone is desperate for feed. Everyone is absolutely fighting for any nickel they can get their hands on at the moment. And we've got very clean concentrates there that we can produce and sell to a whole range of customers. As you go down the grade profile down the bottom of the page there, you can see that we're confident we will still be producing a copper precious metals concentrate through the many into the future for this operation. We think we can still sell that concentrate, but it makes sense to do a little bit more processing on the nickel. So that's really where we're looking at other technologies now to maximise the value of that remaining nickel, copper, cobalt, and PGEs once the copper and PGEs have been floated off. So we're working with the federal government there. They've provided some funding to support that. There's a range of technologies out there in the space. So I guess, yeah, watch this space as we progress that work. And this, as for most people who know me, this is what really gets me excited, is this page right here. So 8,000 square kilometres of essentially undrilled, untouched, unexplored tenure in our portfolio. So we've been exploring on 150 square kilometres at Neuemer. There's 7,850 square kilometres to go. And really it is from the bottom up. So we are totally really, just really learning the basics on this whole new province, the West Yilgarn. But we know, areas like this, craton margins like this host some of the most prolific and world-class nickel copper deposits anywhere on the planet. Norilsk, obviously, Voisey's Bay, Jinchuan, they're all, within 50, 100 kilometres of the craton edge. So we know we're in the right location here, and it's certainly an exciting few years ahead as we scale out our exploration and test these areas. So I won't dwell on the timeline, but you can see obviously plenty going on in Chalice as usual, and some significant upcoming milestones with a scoping study as well as a resource update, and obviously that drilling at Hartog underway at the moment. So we have a world-class resource that really underpins what this company is. Its pedigree is finding. So we will continue to explore. And one of our experts is here with me at the booth today, Keren. So please come and say good day to him. And yeah, we've proven that we've done it before. So I think this is a particularly exciting story in the space. And thank you very much.
It takes us neatly and precisely to morning tea, and we are back here at 11:15.